share my screen, and then, I mean, we're at the top of the hour, so, I mean, we can probably get started, I think. Um, Maybe because he's going to record it, so um, I do think we probably should wait for him. Has he started the recording already? I'm not sure
It
he
does seem
has.
to be
It looks
recording.
like
Yes, he has
yes.
started the recording
Yeah.
already. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think we'll go. We'll all systems go. Retro go. Navcom go. Right. Well, welcome everyone. Zero to Hero. My name is Scott Durow, and we're going to be talking today about code agents and code apps. So last week, you'll have seen how you can use the tools inside Power Platform to build applications. So it's a managed environment inside the Power Platform in all respects. It's a managed platform, but also you can have a managed environment to vibe code. And so I often talk about it as like a safe space to vibe because Power Platform has got all these guardrails in place, which is beautiful because agents can do some very unexpected things. But Power Platform kind of gives you that place where you can build with a little bit more confidence than just doing things in the Wild West. But before we start, just a bit of introduction to who I am and my team. So I'm a developer advocate with Microsoft, and this is Bit, our mascot, who is a raccoon, and he's got lots of friends as well. So it's all very jolly. And this is my team here. So we work with the product team, but we also work with customers and amazing people like yourselves. And so we, at the moment, are very focused on using AI to build solutions, and specifically on Power Platform as well. So we're talking about safe space to create, and that has been the theme, obviously, across all of the different sessions so far. And there is this rather foreboding message that Charles Lamanna gave out, which was low code is dead. But obviously he did put this little caveat as we know it. And I think it's often overlooked because people talk about low code is dead, but they don't talk about the as we know it part as much. And Power Platform is reborn was the message that he gave. And so what we're seeing now is we're really seeing vibe coding, which started off in very humble beginnings, and Andrew Carthy of OpenAI kind of talked about it originally, saying, oh, using AI to build software systems, but forgetting about code even exists. Now, vibe coding has just become a mainstream word now. Everyone is talking about vibe coding. It's become a part of the vernacular. And there are so many different tools that allow you to do it. And so there is this spectrum. Okay, so we've got on one side, we've got prompt-based pure vibe coding, right? So that's what you will have seen with Plan Designer. When Nick was showing being able to use vibe.powerapps.com, put your prompt in, and then you get code, and then you prompt further and you make refinements. So you don't even really need to look at the code. In fact, actually looking at the code sometimes can be a little bit of a disadvantage because you end up seeing things that maybe I'm not really sure what that is, and they get distracted and go down. If you're anything like me, you go down a rabbit hole and get squirreled away and get distracted. But on the other end of the spectrum is more this AI assisted full stack development where you are actually using agents to work alongside you. Now, that is what I'm going to be talking about today, where we are using agents to assist us in the software development lifecycle. So we're not going to be doing this kind of, hey, let's just build everything and not worry about code. We've seen all sorts of different things, horror stories of code leaking, secrets and things on the internet. Obviously, we talk about AI helping us do things, but it's really just an evolution of the way that Clippy used to help us build things. But we're going to be talking not about Clippy. Not about vibe.powerapps.com. We're talking about GitHub Copilot. And GitHub Copilot is an agent system, an agentic coding system that sits inside your IDE and enables you to build software. And so on the surface of it, incidentally, just it is actually free now. There is a free model, a free tier for GitHub Copilot, which is awesome. Obviously, it only includes a certain number of messages per month, but nevertheless, it does allow you to get started and to really start to see the power of this. But what we're going to be talking about is not just simply saying, "Hey, look, make me a really cool spy website." Like just do it and forget about it. Which is what you might do in vibe.powerapps.com or Gen Pages, because if you do that, you might get something that looks really awesome like this. It's a fantastic. And actually, you can't see the animation, but actually, when I did this, it had a sort of really cool sort of CRT low, like glitchy animation effect on it. But you'll see something at the top there. Hey, there's that meme, isn't there? Where like I just vibe coded a new website. It looks awesome. I don't need any web development skills. Check it out. It's localhost. Yeah. So what's going to happen there is if you just give it a prompt, GitHub Copilot a prompt without knowing what you're doing, then you can get, well, mileage will vary. So this is more about like vibe engineering than vibe coding. So where you actually have an understanding of the things that you're doing. And this is important because it's not that you need to understand everything. It's not that you need to understand every line of code that you are seeing your agent building. And then certainly that's going to slow you down if you actually go and look at every single line of code and try and go through it with a fine toothpick. It's more about actually understanding the architectural concepts that are needed in order to build a professional full stack application. So it's about patterns, and it's about security, and it's about having the ability to have a life cycle that allows you to have quality assurance and testing and these things. So when you work with agents, it's about teaching them the skills and prompting them in a way which allows you to create a team of agents with lots of different specialists. And that's what I'm going to show you. Because why do we do this? It's because it allows us to get way, way past the minimal viable product. In the past, you'll have found that you go and build something with Power Platform and you show it to users, and there's a sense of, well, just underwhelmed. It's like, well, this is great, but we've now run out of energy and maybe even run out of budget. But we can get to that minimal viable product so much quicker. And on Power Platform, of course, it means that we can know that we've got the safety, guardrails, and security. But it does mean that we do have to have process. Building software requires process and rigor. And I love this here. It's like, we have to accurately describe what we want. No, we're safe. Our jobs are safe because it's very, very difficult to actually accurately describe what you want. And so AI agents can't do that. We have to work with them in the same way as we work with developers. And of course, we can do that inside Azure or any of these other suppliers. It's very possible to do that. But when you do it inside Power Platform, the experience is that you're going to have to play by some of the Power Platform rules. So there are going to be additional skills that you have to teach your agents, not just the skills it has intrinsically based on the model that it's trained on. You're going to have to give it some skills specifically to understand how do you build within that Power Platform stack? How do you manage environments? How do you manage authentication such that it can be governed? What connectors are there? What even is Dataverse? Because a coding agent may have some understanding of Dataverse, but it's only going to have a basic understanding that it's got part of its model, or if it goes off into the web and learns by reading web pages. In order to really follow best practices, you're going to have to give it skills to understand how to build in Dataverse. Now, of course, that is exactly what vibe.powerapps.com is doing. That's what you've seen already, or generative pages. That's what's happening there, is that those two environments have got a set of skills that have been given to those agents, to those coding agents, by the product team. You don't get to see those instructions. Those instructions are closed. So you are inheriting those instructions. Those instructions are going to change over time with different releases and with different features. So it's what you're seeing there is you're seeing managed instructions. So you can just talk to your agent, and then that agent will use those instructions to build software based on those instructions. What we're talking about when using GitHub Copilot is that we are in charge of those instructions. We get to decide exactly how those agents are going to build software. So we can actually decide on which best practices we want to use. And if we've got opinions, we can give those opinions to the agents. Now, I think this is incredibly powerful because when we actually use agents to build software, you are not just talking about building software on day 0 or even day 1 or week 1 or month 1. We're talking about maintaining that software over time. We're talking about adding features. We're talking about fixing bugs. We're talking about editing existing features to change with the way in our businesses or our customers work. And that is why I think that this approach really lends itself to that enterprise grade building, because we get all the benefits of Power Platform, but we also get all the benefits of being able to teach our agents how we want to use that Power Platform. Now, the good news is that some of that work, that teaching is already available for you. And so I will give you those links at the end. And so on this spectrum, we have all these different techniques to build our software. And what it boils down to is who is providing the instructions and the best practices. So we've got generative pages, we've got vibe.powerapps.com. Those are managed instructions. We don't get to see them. But on the other hand, on the other side of the house, we've got code apps and we've got Power Pages, where we get to be in charge of how we want our agents to build. We're not talking about App Builder or GitHub Spark. Those are other ways of building pro code without Power Platform. We're not talking about Power Pages or Gen Pages. We're talking about code apps today. So what are code apps? What even is it? Now, code apps actually is a third type of app. So we've got Power Apps, we've got model-driven apps, and we've got Canvas apps. And now code apps are a third type of app. Now, when you build an app using vibe.powerapps.com, which is you saw last time, that actually builds a code app. It's actually the code that you see is actually running on that platform. So a code app is kind of a way, you do need premium license, you can access Dataverse, you can access connectors, but it's a way of running TypeScript, building TypeScript, and then compiling that and running that inside the managed environment of Power Platform. That's why it's a third type of app. So you don't need PowerFX because it's all done using pro code. The difference is that vibe.powerapps.com writes that code for you and compiles that code for you and deploys that code for you automatically. When we're using code apps using GitHub Copilot, we write our custom UI and business logic, and then we deploy it ourselves into that Power Platform environment. And so then once that runs just like any other app inside Power Platform. We can access Dataverse. We have all the governance of connectors. We've got a really, really nice place and safe space for our agents to go and build. So how about we actually get something going, right? Because it's going to take a while, right? One of the biggest differences between that vibe.powerapps.com is what we see here is that it's actually a lot quicker. Vibe.powerapps.com is very quick because, and I'll tell you why it's quick, is because it is very, very prescriptive in those opinions. It's got a set of instructions and it's also got a set of templates. And it's also got preloaded libraries. It's only going to be able to use a certain type of library. And so it's going to always look very, very similar. With using VS Code, which is what I'm in here, we have got all of the capabilities effectively of a modern front-end website at our disposal. And so here I've got VS Code open, and actually I've got the GitHub Copilot box here asking me, describe what you want to build next. Now, inside here, I've actually deployed, if you see on this little drop down here, this allows me to select my agent. Now, I've created custom agents here. So I've actually just given them names. This is based on the IT crowd. So if you've ever seen the IT crowd, you'll know who Jen and Moss are. And so Jen is the product manager, and Moss is very good at coding. And I've given these agents instructions, much like you might do in an MCS, a Microsoft Copilot Studio agent, I've given instructions, and I've told it the persona. So what an agent is it's a persona. It's how this particular agent should act. Now, as it turns out, having a persona and having agents work together actually ends up with a much, much better result of trying to pile all your instructions into a single agent. And the reason this is because it's partly to do with the context window. Now, the thing is, it's very similar to the way that we work, right? If we try to handle everything all at once and have all of the knowledge in our head, it's going to be very difficult to get a really good perspective. And that's exactly the same with agents. What happens is that you can have one agent that then spawns off other agents. So I'm going to select the product manager here, Jen, and I'm going to ask Jen, and now I could anthropomorphize Jen and call it her. I think that may be taking it a little bit too far, so let's call it for now. And I'm going to say, let's get it. Is it actually going to let, here we go. I want you to plan a system that manages vacation and sick leave called Holiday Central. So, listen to me a little bit too bad there. So there we go. Let's kick this off. So I'm using Jen and I'm using Claude Opus. Now, if you're using the free model, you won't get necessarily all these different options here. The selection of the models is quite important, but generally, you know, you can get started. If you wanted to use Sonnet, those are very good. Sonnet 4.6 is a pretty good one. Opus is 3 times, uses the 3 times more credits than Sonnet does, but also GPT Codex is also a very good one. So you can experiment with all the different options there. I'm going to use Opus, and I'm just going to get that going. And so if we go over into our GitHub folder here, the way that we define these custom agents is they can live inside the workspace, or they can live inside a project. So I've just put them inside the workspace here just to make it easier for us to see what's going on. So let's open up the product manager. And so the way that we deal with this, the way that we create these agents is we give it a name. And if you've built agents before and using something like Python, or, you'll see something very similar here. So we've got the name, we've got the description, and this is like an orchestrated agent, which has a single point of entry, and it routes all the work to different specialist agents. So you can think of this as Plan Designer, right? It's a very similar sort of thing to Plan Designer. And so if you look, the next step down is what tools this agent can use. So I can say configure tools. And so this is giving me the set of the MCP servers that this agent can use. So there's all the built-in ones. And so we've got the ability to edit files and execute command prompts, and we can read files and all this kind of stuff. But also we've given it some additional access to other different MCP servers. Now, one of the key ones here is the Microsoft Playwright MCP, because what this does, what the Playwright MCP server allows us to do is to actually test things in a browser. Because when you give an agent a browser, which is like Kua in MCS, Microsoft Copilot Studio computer using agents, it means that not only can our agent write code, but it can also test that code is running. Or even if there is something that it can't do through a particular API, it can then open the browser and then go and do it. So for example, if you needed to make a Power Pages website live, it can go off and actually go and toggle the buttons inside the user interface. So it's a very, very effective way of making these agents very powerful. Obviously, here be dragons. You do have to make sure that you've got the guardrails in place to make sure that it's sandboxed enough. But next you give it like the description. Now, one of the things about agents is that they obviously entirely work on natural language. And so we give all these instructions on how it should work. But what's interesting about this is a lot of this stuff, I don't actually remember. I haven't written this, because if I see that a agent is doing something and it's doing something wrong, it made a wrong choice, I can then actually go off and tell it, say, hey, you made a mistake. Can you make sure that that does not happen again? Can you make sure that you update your instructions to provide enough information to steer you in the right direction. And that's exactly what happens. Like, a lot of this stuff will be updated by the agent itself. So it's very much inception. And this is how you have agents that learn. People talk about, it's self-aware and it's learning, all this kind of stuff. And if you've been following OpenClaw, you'll know a lot of people talking about the soul.md, which is, again, it's kind of allows your agent to get experience and memory by updating these files. And so, but this is the persona. So there are kind of two things that it needs to learn. One is a persona, and one of the key things about my coding agent, which is Moss. So I've added in things here like you succeed when the implementation matches the plan and the build passes and the browser testing confirms that the UI works correctly. So I'm giving it very, very specific instructions on to only finish when it's tested it out. I don't want any of these agents to just say, "Oh, I've done it. Go and check it out. Tell me what you like, what you think." I don't want it to do that. I want it to be self-critical. And I've also got a critic agent here, which is I've called Richmond. And so Richmond will be very, very critical of the work. It doesn't actually write code. It doesn't build anything, but its mindset is to challenge every assumption, because it's so important when an agent makes an assumption, it needs to make sure that you are not just glossing over that. And that's exactly what the critic does. I've also got a coding agent, and a coding agent will look for things like workarounds, hacks, fallbacks, no error handling, all these kind of things. So they all kind of work together. But the thing is that the agents are just about the persona. In order to give our agents the ability to do things with specific instructions that are to do with the Power Platform, that's where skills come in. And so you can see here that we've got a set of skills. And so if we look down here at, we've got a UI wireframe skill. Okay, so this skill here tells the agent how to create like lo-fi clickable HTML wireframes, because what this agent, what Jen is doing at the moment is Jen is going off and getting all these agents, other agents to like data architects and requirements design and all these different agents to kind of come up with this plan. And then Jen is actually then saying, go and get Richmond to kind of go and be really, really critical and challenge everything, and then create a report. And then Jen takes that report from Richmond and she gives it back to all the other agents to kind of go and address all the critical issues. And in the UI design, one of the instructions is go and use the UI wireframe skill. The persona doesn't tell exactly what that is. It just says, go and use this skill. So then I can maintain all the instructions in that skill. So you can see here that I'm giving instructions on how this should work, like phase 1, give a screen inventory, make mermaid diagrams for the flow, and then make it clickable so I can get it and see. Now, it's very tempting with all this kind of AI hype. It's very tempting to just say, go cook. I don't care. Just give me it. And I'm so tempted so many times. However, I found that actually giving it the opportunity to plan first and then coming back to me is actually very, very, is very, very useful. So let's just see actually what's going on here. Let's see how it's getting on. So let's see what Jen is doing. So if we go back at the top here. So Jen is reading all these skills. I've also got a workflow state skill here, which basically maintains a set of files. If we go into Copilot here, we've got a file here which gives all the planning, and so all the different steps that this agent's going to do, like lock in immutable decisions. So things like the solution prefix, solution name, those kind of things, the environment that it's going to use, and then spawn a planning team, and then a critic round, and then consolidate final plan. So you can see that this is being put down into a file. And then again, this is a useful technique, because it means if something happens, if I have to reboot or I have to pack up or something, then the agent has got like a persisted state. We do get the state here that's persisted, but it's very useful to just have that on disk. So at the moment, you can see that Jen is actually spawning the planning team. So if I come down here, and you'll see we've got a set of instructions here. It's coming up with immutable decisions. starting, spawning, planning the team here. And so here it's reading the different skills, reading the different agents here. So it's going to keep on going, and then have a conversation. But of course, like all good demos, I've already had one, so I'm going to open up one here. So this holiday requests. So it's just asking me, say, do you want to stop that process? So this is the session that it did before. So if I go up to the top here, you'll see very much the same as it was before. So Holiday Central is asking questions, immutable stuff like that. But here we go. So it's now going to be spawning the different agents. So you've got decision gates, immutable, so spawning the planning team here. And so if we come down, what I'm looking for here is the UX designer. Let's look at that. So Jen has spawned the UX designer, and this is the really important thing, is because each instruction has got a context window. Now GitHub Copilot shows you that context window, so you can see when it's almost full. But when you go off into a child agent, it kind of manages that context a lot better. And so you can see here what Jen has done is Jen has given a prompt for the UX designer, and so you are the designer, and it's given all the instructions here, all the immutable decisions. That this is the output for the data architect. So Jen is given the output from the data architect spawning and into the UX designer, so the UX designer knows what to do. And then it's also specifying the output. So then that's done. So I just scroll all the way down to the bottom. Then we says, okay, now it's outputted all of that into the validation results. So it said, okay, these are the tasks that I've done, and giving the files that it's output to. So that then enables the parent calling agent to then go and pass all of that into the critic. So let's take a look. Actually, let's take a look at the wireframe and the plan. So if I go into my area here and we go into wireframes, I've got plan, I've got UX design. So if I open up the plan, so I'm going to open that in File Explorer here, and I'm going to open up this and then bring this over here. So here we have this is the Holiday Central implementation plan. So you can see it's basically created a whole set of information, immutable decisions, like the publisher prefix, bearing in mind that this is the result of this initial planning stage. So if I want to change any of these things, I could say, you know what, you've chosen this publisher prefix. Don't use a different one, or use an existing one, or something like that. So I've now got the opportunity to review the really important decisions that it's made at the top. But then we've got all the other decisions that it's made. So if we scroll down here, you'll see that it's got tables. We've also got, if we keep going down, we'll have some mermaid diagrams. Here we go. We've got this is the user journey flow. We've got the some state transitions here. We've got a component data flow diagram, but we've also got the wireframes. So if we come into our wireframes and go into the index here, I can now see that it's actually built these lo-fi mockup. And so again, I can take a look at this and say, right, okay, now I go new leave request. Here's all the fields that it's going to do, submit for approval. I can view my requests and all these different things. I can look at a calendar and see all my different team members on this calendar. So it allows me now to review this. And this is so much quicker. There's nothing's built inside Dataverse at this point. It hasn't actually deployed anything. It's purely allowing me to kind of review this. And I think this is one of the things. A lot of people talk about vibe.powerups.com being really, really great for prototyping. Well, what we're doing here is we're doing sort of more traditional prototyping, but we're getting the advantage of the AI agents that makes it so much quicker. And one of the things about AI agents is that we can have them all running parallel. So I could be doing multiple things. And in fact, I've got multiple screens here. So what I tend to do is I tend to have different screens with different agents doing different things. And so once this is done, of course, and once I've had a conversation saying, well, okay, this is the result of my review. And what I tend to do is I kind of keep a note. I don't just keep on prompting it. I create a document of reviews, or I'll annotate maybe screenshots, and I'll just, scribble on the screenshot and then send that all off to the agent to do another. And then so again, I'm working with my agents. So they're autonomously going and doing their thing, and then they'll come back and tell me when they're ready. So that's all cool. Let's just have a look. Before we go and look in at some more detail on how this works, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how Code Apps works. Okay, so there's a few things you really need to understand. It's fundamentally not complex, and it's even simpler when you have AI agents to do it for you. So step one is you've got to enable Code Apps. That's really important. So you go into Power Platform Admin Center and you turn on Code Apps. You have to install Node.js and VS Code. You also have to install the Power Platform tools inside VS Code, which gives you the Power Apps CLI, which allows you to, the Power Platform CLI, which allows you to kind of have a command line interface to automate things. And that's great because all my skills have taught my agent how to use the Power Apps CLI. Step two is we will have to initialize our project. So we use something called npx digit. It's actually dgit. Basically it takes a template from Git, and then it kind of builds that template on my local machine. And then I authenticate with the pack CLI so I can connect to my environment that I already have. And then I use something called pack code init. And what that does is it configures it's a Vite project that it actually creates, which Vite is a framework that is based on React that allows me to build React sites and compile them and deploy them. And so when we use pack code init, it converts that Vite website into a code app site. And then I use npm install to then go and bring down all the libraries that is used by Vite and used by code apps. So then step three is what I can now do is then I can connect my code app to Dataverse. And so I use a command called pack code add data source. And so I pass in the table name, and what that does is it creates a strongly typed interface. So it gives me an interface which has got all the different names of the tables, the attributes, the relationships. And this is great because then the code the agent can use that code that's been generated to then actually make sure that it's not going to make any mistakes when it's using the attribute names. And this is exactly the same as if I was going to write code. I want to have generated code to make sure I don't get any spelling mistakes or typos when I'm typing out table names and attribute names. And then I import that code into the code that's being used, but the agent will do that for me. Then step four is then I can use those generative services. I can build my website using my agent, and then I can use npm run dev. And what that does is it runs it locally on my machine. But the key thing here is that it is hosted by Power Apps. So I don't have to store any passwords. I don't have to store any connection details. All of that is in Power Platform. And so it will run it in Power Platform, and then it will pull that code from my local machine so that I can run it in a browser. And if I make any changes locally, it will just reload it automatically. And this is so much different to the normal way you build with something like Azure, because if you were going to be building with Azure, you'd run it locally, but you'd have to have all credentials and secrets in order to access the resources. But with Power Apps, Code Apps, all those secrets are managed by the Power Apps environment, and we just simply run everything locally, but then actually have it hosted inside Power Apps to use those secrets. And then, of course, step five, we need to build it. And then we can use a command called pack code push, which pushes it up into the environment and move it into a solution. And then we can use make.powerapps to see that, run it, share it, just like any other app. And in fact, because it's in a solution, we would deploy it as part of a solution as well. So it really accelerates the whole process compared to if I was going to be doing this inside Azure. So I've done a video on this a long time ago now, actually. So much has come on in terms of how we use GitHub Copilot, but Code Apps really hasn't changed that much because it's so simple. It doesn't need to be complicated because all it's doing is allowing us to have code written by GitHub Copilot, which we can then run and push inside the Power Apps environment. So what I'm going to look at now is we've looked at my workflow. So I've given you a brief instruction of how Code Apps works, okay? But what I want to do now is actually tell you about how I use Code Apps with GitHub Copilot. I've been fiddling with it for a very long time now, right from the inception, building apps, building for internal use and building proof of concepts. And so I've learned that actually there is a really good workflow that works. So firstly, step one is that we use the plan and wireframe approach, because I found that doing that really does pay dividends, just in the same way as any team. Even if you're agile, right, you still will do these kind of like mock-ups, these user stories that have kind of got lo-fi, even if they're just on a whiteboard. It gives you the ability to really visualize something before you've actually built it. And then you build locally. And the technique that I've been using here very effectively is, rather than connecting it to Dataverse straight away, okay, I use a mock set of data services locally with sample data and make sure that's all working, and then connect it to Dataverse. And we can actually have the agent even build those tables for us and deploy them and then connect to them. So let's have a look at an application that I built here. So this is actually a job site, a application that manages job applications, job postings, and then it's running in Code Apps for all the admin. But there's a Power Pages side of things, which is also allowing people to go and apply for those jobs as well. So if we come into the sessions here, we've got two sessions. One is the initial planning phase that I did, and if we go right to the top here, we can see that, I want a job advertising system where I can create job specs and then publish them to have external people apply. We can use Code Apps for the internal admin and Power Pages for the external app. Let's plan this. So what I've given it very minimal information here, but I have given it a steer, right? This is the architectural steering that you have to do with your agents. If you just left it at that, it would have gone on and said, oh, let's just use Azure or something. But because I've steered it to say Code Apps and Power Pages, you can see now that what Jen has done is it's got and read my different skills here. So you can see it's reading my team planning skills, which are general skills. But if we come down, you'll see that it will start to go and read instructions about specifically how to build things inside Power Apps and Code Apps and Power Pages. So it built my wireframes. So if I go and if I open up this wireframes folder here, so open up that in File Explorer and come into my wireframes. If I go into my Code App here and look at my index here we can see this is what it looked like. It built me a very lo-fi mock-up here, so we can say we can create a new job posting. It'll give all the details. So if there was something that was missing here, you can obviously iterate, submit for review, and here's we can approve or reject it. And obviously when we approve it, it's going to appear on the website, and then we've got our applications which we can view, we can shortlist, change statuses, and all these kind of things. So that's pretty good. I did a little bit of back and forth with it there, but if we go to the Power Pages as well, you can see here, if I go to the index, so you can see here again, it's lo-fi. And I think wireframes like this are really important to kind of not give too much visual sugar, because otherwise it can be distracting. Obviously you can have a visual layout that you maybe enforced, in which case you can create a skill to say this is how we create our company branding. If it always has to look like that, then you might as well have your wireframes look like your company branding. But in this particular case, I just chose to keep it agnostic. So this is the website, so you can say view jobs, and you've got all the different filtering, and you can select a job here, and then you can apply for that, apply now, and you've got your ability to upload your resume and any additional documents by dragging and dropping. So it's all pretty good. I didn't need to do any modifications to that. But if we go back into the second session that we had, which is the prompt up the top here, is actually I said, well, okay, we've worked on the plan, and it's put the plan inside our Copilot plan folder here. So we've got implementation plan and UX design. And so I just said, okay, well, now go and create the Power Pages site and make it make sure to look at the wireframes and plan. Don't ask me to check, use browser automation. And so this is really important here, is because if you simply let your agent go off without skills and instructions like this, then what it will do is it will do something and then it'll ask your advice. But if you want it to really properly iterate and properly work as an autonomous team, then you need to give it a little bit to steer like this. And so my instructions for my Moss coding agent has this as well, but I just felt I should just reinforce it there. But if we look at our skills here, go into GitHub and look at skills, and if we come down here, we've got our Power Pages, but we've also got browser automations. Here's a browser automation skill. So let's look at what skill looks like. So the skill's got a name, it's got a description, and the description is used basically to define when that skill is going to be invoked by a calling agent. And so I've got instructions. Again, it's natural language. Use the browser automation, telling it which MCP server to use the Playwright MCP server, and a little bit of information here on how to do that, but also some information on like how to manage security as well, because you'll need to ask the user to log in. If you see a login prompt, basically tell them to log in autonomously. So lots of information there on how to do that. But then of course I've got some specific information on how to use code apps. So if we go down to Power Apps Code Apps and go to the skill.md, here is our Power Apps code apps. So we've got the description. This is a expert guidance for building Power Apps code apps. And remember all that instructions I was telling you, step 1, step 2, step 3, that's all in here. So it gives in specific instructions on how to install Vite, how to authenticate with environments, how to install the code apps template. Now, most of this is using the Power Apps CLI to do. There is a new CLI, which is currently in preview. You can't do everything using it at the moment, but you can initialize things, and that's using NPX. I'll give you a link to that at the end if you want to try it out. But I'm also saying like common mistakes, like, these are the things that happen. And now I didn't write these things necessarily. It's like a lot of these things are going to be, it's going to have gone off and it's going to pull them from Git or the docs, or even it's just said, okay, well, these are the things that I've made a mistake, so make sure to not do it again. So let's actually give this a task. Let's give it a task. So firstly, what I did notice is that it nicely created me a PowerShell script here. So if I run this PowerShell script, this actually gets my Power App, my code app running locally, as well as my Power Pages site running locally as well and connected to Dataverse. So this allows me to edit it. Now, one of the great things about running things locally rather than to deploy them is if I make any changes to my code, then it's going to hot reload. And so here is this is the URL it's given me for loading up the code app. So I'm going to pop that into the browser and then go back here, and it's also given me, here's for Power Pages. This is the URL it's given me. Let's go and grab that and then go back here and put that into the browser. Okay. So this is actually compiling this on my local, out of my local project here. So we've got, if we come into our code app here, so we've got a folder for code apps, and we've got there we go, and Power Pages. So the code for my code app is in here, my code for my Power Pages is in here. And if I make any changes to this, it will be reflected in my browser. So let's just open up the code app here. And so if we go to the source folder, and if we go into sort of components, you can see here. Now, if you've done anything in vibe.powerapps.com, you'll notice it looks very, very similar. Except the difference here is that we've got full control. We can use GitHub Copilot to make any changes we like. So let's see if it's done anything. It's always interesting to see what our agent has been working on. And so here is a code app. Now you notice that it's running in Power Apps here. You can see at the top, just looks like a normal Canvas app or a model-driven app. But I've got a skill, which is how to write user interfaces using Fluent UI. So if I go up to my skills again here, and we can see here we've got a UI Fluent React skill. So here we go. You can see here that we've got this skills.md, which is the same as we were looking at the skills before, but there's also a resources folder here. And in this resources folder, there's lots of patterns that this skill uses. So like how to make a nav shell, and how to create a form, and pattern like list details, or advanced lists, and all these different things. So, and these are different instructions and little snippets of code as well, which this skill will use, which is why it kind of looks very Fluent UI like. It's not gone off and been created. It's creative, but it's being creative, but it's being creative within the framework of that skill that I've given it. So there's a dashboard here, so we can see active postings. This is the ability to sort of search. So I can search for product manager, and if I open up this job posting, here's all the details, and we've got people who have applied. So if I open up one of these applications, I applied here. We've got I didn't attach a resume for that, but you could go and browse all these, and then once we've got them, we can go and approve them, or reject them, or shortlist and change the statuses. And then we can create new job postings. And if we go over into here's the Power Pages site, and so I can search. Let's just go to view all jobs. Now remember, this is running on localhost. Okay, so now remember before, what I said is, I said that the pattern I use is I start on localhost using sample data. So my skills are designed to not connect it to real data until it's given me the opportunity to look at what it's done. And then we then go and create the data tables in Dataverse and then wire it up. And so, but this is actually connecting to Dataverse. So if I go into my network here, and I say, right, let's just select product manager, you can see here that it's very small, so apologies about that. But this is connecting to localhost, and it's an API. And it's just, let's zoom in a little bit. That's actually not much better, but it's connecting to this job postings with here's the GUID, and it's selecting the different attributes. So this is actually now connecting to Dataverse. And the way that we're doing this is we're proxying, using Vite to proxy the Power Pages API so that it looks like it's on localhost. And then the skill gives all the information on how to do that. And then we can apply, and we can sign in, and that will actually allow me to go and authenticate against. So if I do a sign in, that'll authenticate me against Entra, and so then that allow me to see my applications, and I can apply for jobs, etc. So we've got a pretty good working system here. But if I go into GitHub Copilot, and let's expand out here. Say, for example, what I wanted to do here is say that when I mark something in Code Apps, so let's do a prompt. When I set a job application to be hired, show a confetti animation and also highlight the row in the grid. So I'm going to, actually what I want to do is, let's just stop that and do that again. And let's select MOST, the coding agent, to make sure that MOST does it. So there we go. So MOST is going off and working. Now, this is really where the maintenance things comes in, because of course the maintenance is going to use the same skills and same agent's behavior as I had when I built it. Now, if I store all those agents and those skills inside the GitHub repo in that GitHub folder, rather than just sort of somewhere else, you're going to get a consistent set of a maintenance, and you can be in control of that. Which of course is if you're using someone else's, it's all somewhere else, then you don't necessarily know. It may change its patterns. So you very much have control, and that's why this is called vibe engineering. Okay, it's like it's actually an ability to be fully in control and know what the agents are doing, but not necessarily reviewing every single line of code. So here we go. I'd already, just to save time, I'd already actually installed the Canvas confetti module, but it's detected that. It says, okay, it's already installed here. And then it's going off and it's going on and doing the various different jobs that it needs to. Not only will it edit code here, but it will also run command lines. And it will actually be able to install stuff and be able to write PowerShell, run PowerShell. Now, there is a very interesting setting, which is a little bit contentious, really, which is to do with the, so I bring that down there and go to, hello, here we go. So this is called YOLO mode, okay? YOLO standing for you only live once, effectively. Yes, there are other translations, but I think in this case it means you only live once. And it's interestingly because it's saying this is extremely dangerous and never recommended. Now, if you know what you're doing, or if you're willing to, if you've got a decent enough sandbox, you can have this checked. And what this does is it means that it's going to just cook and it will come back to you when it's finished. It's not going to kind of keep on stopping, going, okay, give me permission to run this PowerShell or that. It's just going to keep going. Now, this is becoming more and more common with Claude, and there's like a dangerously skipped authentication flag that a lot of people use, and you might have heard about OpenClaw. Again, it's becoming a kind of a more of a norm, but what's very, very important here is that you're doing this in an environment where it can't do significant damage, right? And the thing is that VS Code has already got a really neat sandbox around it. So VS Code already gives you a lot of that control. You can set control measures in your PowerShell to make sure that it can only do certain things, so that it's not going to be able to get out of that PowerShell environment. It's already making sure that it's not going to side load anything without asking you for permissions inside VS Code. So VS Code does provide a nice sandbox already. It can't download stuff without asking you if it's trusted. So there, it's about having knowing what you're doing, but I've enabled it here, so it's just going to get on and not come back and ask me. You can see what it's doing is it's actually running some. So it's running some. There we go. It's building it. It's run npx tsc. It's building. It's just checked that if it's got any errors there, and you can see the kind of the output of the console here, and it's doing its stuff. It's cooking. And build passes cleanly. So now let me test in the browser. Now this is where it starts to get really exciting, because it's done the work, it's built, it's edited the code, and if we wanted to, we can see what code it's done here, which is very nice. It's added 66 lines of code. It's removed 2 lines. And now it's run the dev server, and it can actually navigate to the applications page to verify the hired row highlight. Now, this is really, when people talk about game changers, it's usually a little bit of superlatives, but I found that this really is actually a game changer here, because if we look in our folders here, what you can't see is on my other monitor, it's actually got a browser open and it's actually doing some things. Let me just show you here. There we go. You can see here it's opened up this browser and it's now starting to kind of control it. I'm just going to leave that there so I don't get in the way of it. But if we come down here, if we go into my folders here, my Copilot folder, there's GitHub Playwright MCP, and so you can see all the logs. It tells you what it's done, but also down here you can see that it's got some screenshots. So it takes a screenshot of the browser, and then it puts that into the agent, and then the agent looks at it and decides whether or not what to do next. And so it'll say, okay, I'm going to go and press this button, or I'm going to hover over this, and then it will actually check that it actually has built the right functionality, but it'll also go off into portals and things like that. And it will go off into the Power Apps portal. So you can see here it's testing dark mode and light mode, which is awesome. And yeah, it will then even do things like upload. So you can see here that it's uploaded, it's created a PDF here. I gave it this PDF as well, but it's created its own one to test uploads. So let's see if so it's still doing that. But whilst it's doing that, let me just see if we can. It thinks it's done it clearly. So let's go into one of these applications and then set it to hired. So let's go in here and see if I set it to hired. And let's see what it does. There we go. Some lovely confetti. And if we go back to our thing here, and there we go. We've got our highlighted row of saying it's hired. So it's built it, and on my other monitor it is actually now it's testing it, and it will eventually come back and tell me yeah, it's all good. So rather than waiting for that, what I'll do is we'll just quickly talk about some gotchas. So delegation, make sure that your skills, and you make sure keep an eye on delegation, because we know about delegation from Canvas apps, but what this means is that when it runs any queries like pagination or sorting or searching, make sure it runs that on the server, not the client. Doesn't want to download all your database into memory and then do all the searching and sorting. Caching of data as well, make sure you're clear in your instructions on and what to do about caching, especially with Power Pages, of course. Security roles, you're going to need to make sure that you tell it about the different roles and how you map the security roles. You can actually get it to create security roles for you. Certainly if you're going Power Pages, it will create the web roles for you. It's very good at doing that. Error handling, of course, not error handling at the code level, but error handling from a process perspective. So like, okay, what happens if when I'm doing this particular thing, somebody else has done something on a different browser and a different session. And of course, that brings me on to transaction locking. Think about what locking do you need in there if you're booking a particular seat on a training course, for example, making sure that two people don't book the same seat. And also, obviously, responsiveness and accessibility design. So, and funnily enough, all these things are the things that we are used to thinking about anyway. They are not new. It's not like, oh, wow, Scott, I'd never thought of these things. Of course you thought about these things. These are the things we've always had to think about. And so it's no surprise that we've got to teach our agents to do it. There is an intrinsic set of knowledge in an agent because of the data that it's trained on. But when we talking about building with Power Platform, we want to have these opinions of how we want it to build rather than on how it decides to build. And that's exactly what these agents and skill files are doing. So links then, before we finish, actually it's flashing on my taskbar. Let's just go and flip back to see what it's actually saying. Okay, it's just carrying on. Okay, it's saying the confetti loaded. Right, okay, it's telling me that it's on its way. So here's some links. So if you want to go and learn more about how to build code apps, you can get all those commands I was talking about. There is actually a repo, this code apps repo, which gives you lots of templates and also more information. And actually, if you want to, you can just point your agent at that repo and it will go, okay, right, I'll go and use that information and it works it out pretty well. But you can make skills as well. There is also this preview npm CLI. So most of it's been previously done using the pack CLI, but there is now a new preview which doesn't require you to have the pack CLI installed. It doesn't have all the commands at the moment, but it's getting there. So in the future, that's the way that we will be using code apps. The pack code apps verb will be deprecated eventually in pack CLI. Pack CLI itself is not deprecated, obviously, but just the code apps part of it is moving into npm. And then if you want to, these we've been talking about skills, right? So if I open up this is a repo that is being, so this is an official repo, which is from the product team, which gives you all the different skills. And you can see here, if we go into our up this plugin here. Where is it? Plugin. There we are. You can see if we go into Power Pages, for example, you can see all the different skills and agents and all the instructions. And of course, the great thing about these is that they are just natural language, right? You know, so you can actually learn a lot from this. You can learn about, okay, that's how we're meant to do it. This is the official way of doing it. And this is what blows my mind is that this is a new economy. It's like sharing our knowledge and our experience in a way that's humans can understand, of course, but also in a way that agents can understand. So take a look at this, get sharing your skills, and get training of your agents. If you want to check out our Power Advocates Hub, we've got lots of links. That's a really good resource. But also Agent Academy, if you've not clocked already that the operative rank is now being released, and also the latest batch of videos has just been uploaded as well, so you can go and learn about how to build agents in Copilot Studio, and also watch us demonstrate to you on the videos. So that has been an awful lot to take in. I do appreciate. If you want to, there is this video that I did on the Agent Academy, sorry, the Advocacy Academy channel. It shows a lot of this, but what I've tried to focus on is the state of how it is today and all the new features that you can do inside VS Code, multi-agent skills, providing with this kind of ability, this framework that allows it to iterate using browser automation and MCP servers. It's a brave new world. So thank you ever so much. If you want to email me, there's my email address. Any questions? Yeah, I'd be delighted to talk to you. Victor, over to you.
We don't hear you, Victor.
Let's try this now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. Well, I feel like there is a need for a Zero to Hero session for a whole 12 weeks just for this type of subject. I mean, there was a lot today. There are questions here, Scott, but I'm very sensitive for of your time. So what I will do is I will collect the questions. We'll respond through the Zero to Hero WhatsApp channel. So if you access our website, you have access to the channel as well, and we'll cover all of those there. Thank you so much, my friend, and thank you everyone who has joined us, who has followed the lessons, and also the ones that joined us for the first time today. We'll see you next week. And for those who are coming for the Canadian Power Platform Summit, we'll see you in 15 days. And yet, for those who are attending the MVP Summit, we'll see you in about 3 weeks. So amazing. Thank you so much, Scott. And we'll see you next time. All right. Take care, everybody.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Victor.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.